Welcome back, everyone. It is Wins Above Fantasy, episode 150. Steve, it feels like a mini milestone, even though, here we are post trade deadline, certainly getting into the grind of it. It is episode 150, and we are talking stretch run waiver wire heroes. And if we knew that these guys were waiver wire heroes for a fact, then we would be rich men, Steve, because these are dart throws at this point. These are gambles, and we've got a fun exercise that we are doing, kind of a mini game here tonight to try to find diamonds in the rough. And that exercise itself can be rough and bleak, but that's kind of what it feels like this time of year when you're out looking at the recent ads, the top ads in your league, and you're like, I don't know that I want any of these guys, but you got to find somebody to move the needle with some streaming or with somebody that's got some positive signs pointing up. So it's going to be a fun show. We got pitchers and hitters to talk about. And Steve, it'll be one that we get to come back and measure for the banter in a couple months' time. But how's it going out there, man?
It's good. It's good. It was a fun trade deadline. I don't know. There's something about baseball trade deadline, maybe because it's like when you're a kid and a baseball fan, it's during summer and like you're just sitting there watching Baseball Tonight all day long as a kid, waiting for the trades to come in. It's a little different now, just like refreshing your Twitter feed or turning on notifications for Jeff Passan for the day or whatever. But it just, it's something, it tugs at the heartstrings for me. It's trade deadline's always a special day. And even though this show isn't trade deadline focus, it's more trade deadline adjacent because a lot of this is like fallout from the trade deadline that creates opportunity. I figure there's so many shows on the Pitcherless Podcast Network and other pods elsewhere, and we're already now 26 hours post deadline, 27 hours post deadline as we record this. There's definitely other podcasts to consume, like the full breakdown, so I don't want to do an episode like that, but this is a fun time as we're recording here in the last day of July and the calendar flips to August, and we sort of look back every year and say, wow, like this was the guy that was available on August 5th that was a league winner, and we have a fun game sort of to try and get ahead of that and give some names that potentially could be those guys. It's a lot easier, obviously, looking back at what Cole Reagans was, but hey, we talked about Cole Reagans a lot as the breakout was happening. This is probably even a little bit harder because we saw that happening with Reagans, but maybe we're trying to get ahead of it and some of these names. If anyone's half as good as Reagans, I would count that as a win. Reagans from 2023 and on August and September that was. So it's an exciting time because people start to fade out. It's fantasy baseball. Like if you're paying attention, you're a step ahead of a lot of your league mates. So I think it's a good idea and a nice spin on some of the transactions that happened recently and some opportunities that are now there for certain players that weren't just a day or two ago. So hopefully there's some names here that if there's one that could be quote unquote a league winner, I think we did a great job, but got some interesting names and think that there's some good logic into why we put these names on the rundown. So excited to talk about them.
Yeah, it is good. And I think we'll get into the formula too, because you added an extra barrier that I kind of missed the assignment on a couple things, but we made it extra deep. So if you guys are in some deeper leagues, some of these names still might be available. And like you said, Steve, if we hit on one or two of them, then yeah, we've done our job. And if not, we'll at least come back and look at Steve's team here versus my team. We got pitchers and hitters, and we will assess it. But yeah, totally echo the sentiment you said, by the way, Steve. Like the deadline, it's like I'd be in a work meeting and then it's Christmas to go out to like 358 baseball and just scroll from the rumors to the breaking headlines and see, yeah, tons of action in the last like day.
I'll always love trade deadline day. Like I know that now prospects aren't moved as much, or at least top end prospects, and people have plans
There's
that not
permanence
anymore. But,
yeah.
it's just something that's special to me.
Yeah, and it's like there's such a long-term nature to baseball that you get used to these guys on these same teams, and you almost think that it's forever their circumstance, and then it's like it all happens so fast that it's like, yeah, exactly. So it is,
and there's different themes, like you see like what the Marlins do overall, and like how many prospects they acquire. You look at what teams sort of buy and sell at the same time. It's just an interesting time. I'll always love it.
Yeah, for sure. So if you guys are tuning in, we appreciate you guys this late in the season, as this is the August episode. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at WinsBoPod. I'm at Van_verified. Steve is at Stav8818. We are still weekly down the home stretch of the season, and you guys can throw any episode topics that you guys want at us, either on Twitter or email us, winsbowfantasy@gmail.com. But without further ado, Steve, let's talk about the topic, the formula. So I know we're going to Razzball Player Rater on this as kind of our database to look at guys. And the first criteria was they have to be under 75% rostered on Razzball. But that's a deeper pool there.
Yeah, that was the I think the roster percentage, I was mistaken. I thought they had the Yahoo roster percentage. I think that's the Razzball Commenter League rostership percentage,
which is
So
it's got to be deeper rosters, because some of these guys were like 78 on Razzball and like 41 on Yahoo.
I went to Yahoo for mine. I hope you did for yours too. So we'll just put that out there. 75% are rostered on, and I'll just go into the ground rules. So this is kind of an idea that is stolen, more properly actually borrowed from Rates and Barrels. They did a second half bounce backs drafts, and there wasn't any rostership limitation, right? You could pick any player. I think they used the Fangraphs Player Rater, who had a negative value, and you can draft any one of those players for and whoever accrued the most value post All-Star break, which is when that draft, as long as they had a negative value heading into it, is going to be the winner. But to make this a waiver wire show, and someone that's most likely available in your league, we put in that under 75% rostership percentage. Most of my guys, I think, were under 50%. So I think yours were too. So they're going to be really, really deep. And it definitely made it harder. Right. Like it was easy. It's easy to pick a Lou Reese Robert, or, another guy who was hurt in the first half that had negative value. But when you put the rostership limitation on it, you're really going to get deep. And I think that's the spirit of this show, because we want to find guys that you could that are most likely available in all but like the deepest of leagues. Maybe it's not the case for like 15-team NFBC leagues, but in your standard home league teams, all these guys that we should talk about should be available. 75% are under negative value on the Razzball Player Rater. And then whoever accrues with their teams, it's 3 pitchers, 3 hitters. Whoever accrues the most dollar value from this point out on the Razzball Player Rater will be the winner. And we have like the dollar value here that we can compare to the end of the season to see who has the most value there. So excited to get into it, and think we got some good names, and hopefully we find some hidden gems that we'll be talking about. Wow, this guy was available on August 1st, and he did what the last 2 months of the season? Thank God I added him. That's the goal here. So excited to get into it.
Well, yeah, I think we can jump straight in too. It's for one, I struck out, Steve, because one, cut fresh off the deadline, I was excited to talk about Connor Norby, and then you brought to my attention that the Marlins went ahead and optioned him. So quite a swing for him to go from, starting for a playoff team to being just basically trapped in the minors. So we won't talk about Norby, but my first guy here, if you're good with me starting off, is Matt Wallner. And Matt Wallner was a name that was pretty high on my list for deeper league drafts back in March. I know that wasn't unique to, I mean, he across the industry, he's kind of a StatCast darling because of just how hard he hits the ball. He was one that I had talked about, I believe it was during PitchCon. Yeah. And so Wallner struggled mightily to start the season. He actually was sent down for a while. And since he's been back up, he has just been crushing baseballs. 4 homers in 13 games. And then actually, I think, did he homer again today? I know he had one that went way back to the wall.
He did homer today, and he had a double. So, yeah.
And he had that double was going to be a homer, but it got kind of robbed from the fence. So Wallner, I mean, you're just looking at like Herculean strength here with this guy. Like the batted balls aren't qualified yet, but it doesn't matter because it gets the point across. He's got a 29% barrel rate through, I think it's like 34, 35 batted balls. Last year, which is what was so exciting about him, he had an 18.8% barrel rate. The dude just crushes homers, like so many no doubters. The fact that he's coming up, he's hitting well. I just think, for a guy that, again, on the Razzball league, it's a 39% rostered, and his projected value is minus $20.80. So he definitely fits the criteria and then some.
Was that his projected value or his value current to date?
I think that's his value current to date.
Okay, yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Are you judging it off of their projected value rest of the way in?
No. It's what they have done so far needs to be negative, right? And
so his rest of season projected value is minus $21. So that doesn't look pretty either.
Interesting.
But 4% rostered. I mean, there are strikeouts in his game, which has been really what's hampered him, like a 30% plus strikeout. But I mean, the way this guy hits the ball, it just feels kind of like a Joey Gallo thing. And he's running hot right now with 3 homers in the last 5 games. So I like Wallner. I think you could do a lot worse for a guy that's just 4% rostered in Yahoo leagues. And I think there's some platooning as well. But again, this is a guy who could run in that way that like Jock Peterson or Rayleigh or somebody that, Ryan O'Hearn, where the splits are so good that you're willing to kind of stomach when he does get platooned. So that's Wallner there. My first guy, Steve. Open to your thoughts for the guy. And I didn't mention he's also cleanup hitter. So that's also prime spot in the lineup. But talk about Wallner. Do you think this is a good one to start here?
It's just incredible that a guy that was sent down pretty quickly early in the season, he had a 51% strikeout rate in this short sample that he was up in April and May. So that's not good. But he's basically already erased all that and has an OPS currently over 1,000. So he was so bad that he was sent down and striking out half of his plate appearances, and then he's basically just erased that. And his year-to-date line has an OPS over 1,000. The pushback I'll give is that it does look like it's a strict platoon. He did face lefties versus the Mets on Monday and Tuesday and did not play in either of those games. And even though he has cut his strikeout rate by 14.5% from when he was sent down in April and in April, it's still a 37% strikeout rate. So I think there are going to be some extreme peaks and valleys here. We're definitely at a peak. And there'll also be the fact that he will not play. I don't think they're going to play him versus lefties at all. It just seems like a strict platoon for him. He has 10 plate appearances versus a lefty total this year, and 6 of them have resulted in strikeouts. In the second half versus as a lefty, I I do not believe he's had a plate appearance there. I could be wrong, but it's exciting. The power is absolutely legit. The bat, like I think when you take the qualifications off the bat speed leaderboard, like he's number one in bat speed. The barrel rate is obviously unbelievable at 29%. And like you said, it's not some like 15 batted ball samples. It's a decent chunk. So yeah, I would expect a good amount of homers the rest of the way, but maybe not a batting average above 200, and maybe not enough consistent playing time. But if he does continue to run like this, like it doesn't really matter. He's going to get the value. So
I think Ray, just looking at some of the platoon lock guys, like I think Luke Raley is the best comp because Raley has a 30+% strikeout rate. Now Raley comes with a little bit of speed.
Yeah,
Wallner
a
doesn't
little
have.
less power. Definitely a little less power though.
Yeah, less power. But like last year, Raley, even with the 30% K rate and sitting against lefties, 19 homers, 249 average, 823 OPS. So Wallner, it's like, yeah, the hit tool. Because let's see, Raley, the XBA was 214 last year. I mean, Wallner, we saw last year in 2023, he hit 249. So I don't know that he's going to be like Mendoza line when he's crushing.
Yeah,
righties.
I just think that's a product of small sample. I think if you're going to give Wallner the amount of playing time that he's earning right now, when you're striking out 40% of the time,
is it 40 right now?
It's 37 since he's come back. Like that's like Reese Hins territory.
That's got to come down.
That's the downside, I think. And like we already did see him get sent down, right? Already. So it already happened once so far this year. I mean,
it's a home run swing, Steve.
Looking at the minors, like it's high 20s to mid 30s basically at every stop. At AAA this year, he was still striking out 31% of the time. He did hit 19 homers with an 888 OPS. So, I mean, if he strikes out 30% of the time, like you'll take that. But I mean, he does run high BABIPs, like with those strikeouts,
dude, because he crushes the ball.
The lowest batting average is like 250. So,
well, in 3 seasons in the majors, he has a 248 average, and he's always struck out a lot. Now he hasn't struck out 40% of the time, but I think it's one of those where it's like when he does hit it, he is just demolishing the ball. So you're probably right.
Yeah,
like
it's in a full season. It's still less. It's still 120 games, right? In his parts of 3 seasons. So,
yep.
Yeah, it was a 328 BABIP last year and a 423 so far this year. Like, I just don't know.
Screaming sustainable.
Yeah. I think the 246 career batting average is a little misleading. And there could be a spell like we saw in the beginning of the season, just when you strike out. Like on the year, it's a 43% strikeout rate on the year in the 64 in the 79 plate appearances.
Yeah, it's obviously a feast or famine profile, no doubt about that. You're trying to catch a hot streak, lightning in a bottle, and one of those, like, I don't know.
You hope that there's another. You hope that if there's one more stretch like he's currently on, like it's going to be a good pick.
Yeah, and I think he's got. I mean, he's got that type of pop.
Yeah, I agree. Sure. I agree.
I mean, he almost hit 2 today, and he hit the one. He was already on our rundown before that, so he is red hot. But Steve, why don't you switch over? Let's do your first hitter here.
This is the exact opposite of Matt Wallner, and kind of just echo your thoughts and sort of, I think you put like, this is brutal on the rundown, just like trying to pick out these names. Like I tried to do like the projections thing and filter. It's like, okay, here's the players that broke out last year in the second half. What was their overall line? And like when I did that, I just got like really good players. I was like, okay, the players who had improvements in the second half of the WRC plus by 20%, like they had this barrel rate, this chase rate, this contact rate, like for the underlying numbers, and it didn't really spit out any like, oh, this guy's 20% rostered and I must go grab him. The closest thing I got to was like Ty France, who is not doing anything awe-inspiring, but was a trade deadline mover, moved from Seattle to Cincinnati, which is basically as good as a park upgrade that you can get, going from, especially for right-handed pitchers in Seattle, right-handed hitters in Seattle to Cincinnati. One of the probably the most hitter-friendly ballpark other than Colorado. And Ty France was a driveline guy. There was some hype about this offseason with the work that he put in, and there is some positive numbers under the hood. He does have a 9.2% barrel rate. The hard hit rate's fine. It's in line with his career. It's nothing special, but the fact that he's barreling the ball more, he's chasing less, still making good contact. The Savant page does not jump off the page, but I think France was one of those guys that we were sort of waiting to break out early in the season. We saw like some good process stats that never really happened. He got hurt, sort of fell out of favor in Seattle, and it never really came to fruition there. I think with the ballpark change and continuing to have the better process and a good barrel rate, I think that maybe we could start to see some positive regression for Ty France. There is some luck numbers. It's a low BABIP despite a good contact rate and a passable strikeout rate, basically exactly. Swing and miss rate at exactly league average. Is taking more walks. So I think if he gets some run here, and he very well could, with all the injuries that the Reds are dealing with up front, maybe he can carve out some playing time there and finally cash in on some of the preseason hype, and have maybe, he has 8 homers year to date. Maybe he could finish with like 16 and hit 8 the rest of the way, and be a decent contributing bat in that Cincinnati lineup.
Yeah, I'm split here, Steve, because I liked. I was kind of in on the France movement. I think we talked about him recently, semi-recently, probably about a month or two back, and the driveline stuff was encouraging. Looking at like the rolling charts, for some reason, I thought his contact was like plus, and it's been on the rolling charts like
fine.
under. Yeah, under MLB average, and then the power is looking like it's been kind of in a dip in the past like month and a half. So there would have to be a turnaround, but I think the overall tools are interesting, and he's still only 30, even though it seems like he's been around forever. And like you said, it's like the plate discipline and the park factor are enough to get pretty excited about it. What's the playing time look like for him in Cincinnati?
That I'm not sure of. I don't think he started today. I'm pulling up the Reds roster resource now. They have him as someone on the bench, but they have Spencer Steer at first. They have Noelvi Marte. It seems like it could be maybe a platoon situation. When they face a lefty, he would definitely be in. Will Benson would be on the bench, and then you can move Steer to the outfield. So he'll have to do some work.
That's right.
I mean, I know Noelvi Marte hasn't been great, so maybe there's some opportunity there. Steer can move around the diamond. Candelario can play third. He's currently at DH.
They'll mix him in. Yep.
There's definitely some room if he starts hitting. He would have to start hitting. I don't know. I don't feel super, super confident about this one. I think probably of my hitter choices, this is probably my least favorite one, but
Okay. Well,
worth a
yeah.
shot in Cincinnati for sure. That's
Yeah.
sort of
And these are
the big
all
reason. Yeah,
we'll keep going back to the disclaimers. Like these are all tough
they're
sells, but
they're shots in the dark. Yeah,
they are. But we'll move to another one and a name that's kind of been on the fringe, I feel like, for a lot of fantasy managers this year. It's Nolan Schanuel that is the first baseman for the Angels, just 22 years old, and kind of not your prototypical first baseman because he's got really good plate discipline, not a ton of pop. He does have 11 homers on the year, 4 steals, a 254 average, but he's like a leadoff hitting first baseman. And I know like Casey Bubba was big on him even at the start of the year, but 46%. And this was the one, Steve, that kind of broke the rule in negative because it was a $1.7 dollar value in the positive. So you gave me some leniency on this one. But Sean Wells running hot right now. He's been hitting 320 for the past month. Again, the 3 homers, a 3 homer month pace for this guy you'll take because he's kind of a Boy Scout with like the plate skills and the contact and stuff. What's most interesting though is looking at the rolling charts for Schanuel. Like at the start of the season, he had that reputation of like all in on the contact. I'll see if it's reflected in the splits. Honestly, not really, because the average was low to start the season and it's picked up a little bit where it's climbed up to like 258, 320. But if you look at his contact and his power rolling charts, it is a complete inverse relationship where like the contact stuff is gone down, the power has gone up, which to me, again, for a 22-year-old hitter, says that he's trying to make an intentional trade-off of like, swinging for the fences and going for that like pole lefty power, whereas a lot of his homers are coming from. So I'm just, again, when you're looking at this tight of parameters of like a guy who could impact your teams, I think this is an interesting one where the runs could rack up. Again, to put it in perspective on like the Savant stuff, his whiff rate on in terms of plate discipline, 95th percentile, chase rate, 91st percentile. The squared up percent on the batting or the bat speed is 96th percentile. So like he does a lot of that stuff well. It's just the batted ball data is a little bit lackluster. But I'm kind of curious if you go over to pitcher list and look at his page here. I'm curious for like what his IPA. Okay, so good, but not amazing. It looks like it's like probably 60th percentile. Yeah, I mean, overall, I think this is just kind of a solid piece. I don't know that it's going to run as like hot cold as a Wallner, or kind of come out of nowhere like France could, because I feel like this is who he's been most of the season. I think what's most interesting about this is that it appears things are happening under the hood to where he could be getting even more pop, which you add power to a guy who has really good plate discipline and has had good contact skills. We've seen some good players emerge from that type of, prototype. So that's Nolan Schanuel. But Steve, your thoughts on him before we go to your second one?
Yeah, he was super interesting. He was drafted just last year, first round, like already debuted in the same year, right? The Angels just do weird stuff like that. I mean, it's kind of they had decent results, right? Like Neto was the same thing the year before that.
Right.
And Chanuel was like, this guy that hit like close to 400 in college, but the power was questionable. And in my mind, it still remains highly questionable. It's just a 4.2% power rate, a 27.2% hard hit rate. That's like low of low. Like it's just crazy. And then there was another interesting fact that, despite having, I think, 5 or 6 home runs at the time, maybe even 7, he didn't hit a ball 400 feet until June 16th of this year. And only 2 of his 11 home runs have gone 400 feet. They both gone 410. He hit one 410 over the weekend for a second 400-foot hit. So it's like just enough. I mean, it works. It's all pull side stuff, and like if he could tap and do like an Isaac Paredes while having like a Luis Arias
Let me
approach, like
go peek at
it
that,
could
Steve.
be
Go peek at that
it could be
Discord.
interesting. Yeah.
Peek at that Discord
I'll pull it up. I'll
message
pull it up.
that
Yeah.
I just dropped the rolling
Yeah.
chart. Like, it is a jaw
Let's see if
dropper
we can-
that it's this guy for this chart. Now, maybe that's like somehow skewed data, but his rolling power plus has been quite a bit above MLB
there's
average,
definitely
which is
been
enough to be interesting.
I wonder if I can get like his barrel rate, like I'll pull up like his rolling barrel rate too, just to get more of a raw power
Yeah, because
metric.
it could
there
be like 3
for him.
barrels or something.
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
not a
it
lot
could
of
be.
games.
It could be. But it's definitely interesting, and like, because if he can add power, then it's something that, you know, it's the only thing that's sort of missing, right?
Yeah, because he could easily
Or
be a
if you can add
260,
power to
270
this
hitter.
like
Yeah.
Luis Arias approach, like then it's super interesting. Yeah, like the expected WOBA is way up over the last few plate appearances too. The hard hit rates, yeah, like the rolling hard hit rate over 50 batted balls is still just like 28%.
It's not good at all.
But I mean, you know, he's doing something right as far as to generate that slug. Like his rolling slugging percentage over the last 50 plate appearances is 650. Like it's good. So it's an
kind of an
interesting
anomaly.
profile.
Yeah.
But this is like the kind of guys that we're looking at to if we want to have hits here. So it's definitely interesting, right? Like it's the question was, can Chanuel add a little bit of power to this amazing contact ability, and guy that could basically roll out of bed and roll out of college and hit 300, which is something that he's like kind of already did. Like, it's a cliche, but he did do that. He came basically right from the majors and became, a decent average hitter. I know it's not 300
275. Yeah,
for
275
his
last
career.
year.
It's 260, 275 last year. It is a bit of a low BABIP, but you know, someone that could take a walk, doesn't strike out much, has a good hit tool. Clearly, like I would have taken the under on 11 home runs for the year already.
Me too.
And that's what he's at. So maybe he can do that, like Isaac Paredes approach with this like elite contact skill, just from the left side. So you know, we overlooked Isaac Paredes for a while. So interesting to see, and I think it's a good pick.
Yeah, 14% rostered. That's Nolan, Seanwell, and Steve. Let's go back to you for your second hitter.
Yeah, my second hitter is Xavier Edwards, and I guess I should have noted this for Ty France. His value is negative $11.5, and he's just 5% rostered on Yahoo. Xavier Edwards to date is negative $13.9. He's a little bit a higher rostered percentage at 59% rostered. That's because he hit for the cycle on Sunday, has been stealing some bases, and is another similar Luis Arias type. I mean, maybe that's what we're left with. It's just another guy with elite bat to ball skills, not elite bat speed, low hard hit rate, low barrel rate, even worse than Chanuel. It's a smaller sample, but it says it's a 26.3% hard hit rate, a 2.6% barrel rate, a 102.2 max EV at AAA and 109 at bats. It was a 101 max EV.
He was the original Blake Snell comment, right? On the old slap. We'll call it a slapstick hitter.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he was and he was traded from the Padres or from the Rays, from the Padres to the Rays. So like that was the comment. Yeah, right. Yeah, that was a moment in infamy. But he does have 9 steals already. does have a homer. I think he might have homered again today. I think he has 2 homers. I could be wrong on that. But doesn't strike out, walks a lot. So like this could be a Luis Arias profile with speed and a little bit of pop. So maybe like a Steven Kwan. I'm not even sure if he has as much power as Kwan does, but Kwan's kind of grown into a little bit of power here.
Yeah.
His highest ISO in the minors was 119 this year, so not even close to like the 200 threshold. But I think if he continues to get on base and steal bases and can hit a few more homers, it could be something that's pretty valuable for the rest of the season, especially considering the Marlins traded away everyone and have no choice but to play Edwards every day and probably play him at the top of the lineup.
Well, it won't be Norby that's playing over him, as we know now. But yeah, this is a good one, Steve. I mean, he's tailor made for my home league settings, and he was scooped up in a hurry by a guy who generally, when he adds someone, we've all got that guy in your league that if they add him, they're just going to go off, and that has happened for Xavier Edwards. So if you need no other rationale, it's because Corselli has added him. So Edwards, I think this time of year, you're not going to get a 5 category guy. You know what I mean? So it's like if you get 3 categories that look
you need
good,
a guy to have like 4.5 categories for 2 months. And if Edwards somehow or Shanuel somehow go on like a 8 homer pace the rest of the year, that's what's the difference. Like you don't need like even to bring it back to Wallner, like you don't necessarily need it to be sustainable because it is such a short sample, right?
Yeah, you just need him to do what he does well, very well, and then he's at least contributing and helping to your team. And then you're not going to get steals from Wallner. You're probably not going to get pop from Xavier Edwards. But like as long as they are, effectively being a Steven Kwan or an Arias, and then you can stumble into a few homers, then you've again change the trajectory of your standings because again, they've got it projected that he's a minus $14 player, like a lot of players left and right of him that are on the wire. So that's Xavier Edwards. Great list so far. We got Wallner, Nolan Schanuel, we got Ty France and Xavier Edwards. We got more hitters and then a list of pitchers as well, but we're going to take our first ad break and we'll be right back after this. Okay, so Steve, I think rounding out here, I'm on the clock for my third one. And again, it's a slight rule break with the $1.50 projected value, but just 35% rostered. So widely available. It is Dylan Moore, who it seems like ages ago had the big season when we were kind of, I think, just starting the podcast. And we liked what Moore did with like the 2021, right? When he had 12 homers, 21 steals. Or no, even that was, what was it? Oh, it must have been the shortened year, 2020. Yeah, he had 8 homers and 12 steals, hit 255. And the next year he hit 181. He's just been kind of this fringy, can't get the batting average going, but he's been a steal specialist. And this year, the power is kind of making its way back a little bit. He's got 9 homers. He's got 20 steals to date, and he's hitting 213. That's been in 90 games this season. And he's a guy that recently, like in the past month, has kind of been going in the right direction for him. Again, that's, hitting more like 220 instead of 180. He's hit below 200 a couple months this season. So that's the bad part. The good part is he had 7 steals in July. So again, he's kind of a specialist in that way. This is where I put my note, Steve, that this exercise is brutal. In a vacuum, do I like Dylan Moore? No, not necessarily. But if you are looking for somebody who can just straight up help you out with some categories you need, I think we might see him finish the season with 35 steals. And that's the hope that you're looking at for Dylan Moore, but not sure if there's too much to go in here. Although the only thing I would add is if we go over to roster resource, based on some of the moves here. Okay, so they do have him starting still at hitting 7th in the lineup. So yeah, that's Dylan Moore. I was just curious with like Justin Turner if it shook stuff up. Also a Rosarena over there now. But yeah, he's projected to start still. So that's Dylan Moore. Not sure how much there is to be excited about. But what do you think about Moore, Steve?
I think I like it. Quietly over the last 3 years, his barrel rates have been 13%, 17%, and 9% this year. Sure, it was only a 67 game sample when it was a 17% barrel rate last year. But I mean, those numbers are decent, and even the 9.2% this year is passable, right? It's 60th percentile in the league, so above average there. And I'm surprised the strikeout rate is still so high. It's the best contact rate of his career. Lowest swing strike rate at just 8.9%. Like an 8.9 swing strike rate shouldn't match up with a 27% strikeout rate. He does take a lot of pitches. Yeah, he doesn't chase at all at just 23% and only swings in zone at 68%. So like he's a guy that just does not swing, and maybe that's what leads to like higher barrel rates and keeps the K rate high. He's probably goes down looking a bunch or takes a lot of strikes. So maybe if he can be a little bit more aggressive and pair that, but still, like, it's just a 269 BABIP for a guy that has 20 stolen bases. Like, he shouldn't be running a 269 BABIP and a 212 average. I would expect some regression there, though. The XBA is just 205. Like, that's crazy.
His contact rates are real bad on like his rolling chart. I don't know if that's it. And he's just
the whiff rate is at 24%. It's not like like the swing strike rate is super low. So maybe just making weak contact, but the overall hard hit rate isn't too bad either. It's like basically league average.
What's the launch angle doing? Is that it? I mean, is this just like a ground ball?
The launch angles, yeah, it's good. It's 38th, 88th percentile, 24%. So like, I'm trying to look at the batted ball profile too. It's not like crazy fly balls or ground balls. So I don't know. It's pretty weird. I'm surprised.
It's a confusing
the
profile.
is that low. And like Dylan Moore, it seems like we've talked about Dylan Moore having a lower batting average than we expect, like for every year but the shortened season. So maybe this is just who he is. He is a low 200s hitters, but hey, all you need him is to bat 260 for 2 months to have his line finish around 240, right? 230,
and a good walk rate, which I think matters for
stolen bases. Yeah. And he's got the pop. He has 9 homers in 89 games. That's not nothing.
Yeah. So I mean, it's again, if you're squinting, you could see it work out for a month at a time. I mean, that's what we need is the lightning in the bottle. But yeah, it is a confusing profile here. I will say that the X slug this year is as high as it's been since 2020. So that's encouraging. That's on the pitcher list page. But yeah, there's certainly some weird kind of combinations of elements in the profile. Like you were saying, it definitely, I mean, you're right. Looking at like the swing aggression is way, way lower than MLB average. The contact rate on the rolling charts is way, way down. But yeah, when he does hit it, it seems like he hits it pretty well, and he's super selective with his swing. So it's just kind of a strange profile, but yeah, you'll take the speed. So that's Dylan Moore. Why don't you round us out with your third hitter, Steve? And then we've got some pitchers to talk about.
This one I'm pretty excited about. I think he's going to have a good end to the season, and that's Josh Lowe of the Tampa Bay Rays. I think he's been battling injuries this year. I think he was on the IL twice, if that's correct. He's only played 52 games so far, 190 plate appearances, and it hasn't been great. He has accrued negative $14.3 worth of value, and he is 53% rostered. So this one is another one that's yeah, the value's been bad, but the availability may not be there. But hey, I saw him out there in basically all of like my non-NFBC leagues, so maybe he'll be out
Mhm.
there. Yeah, it's not been great with a 217, 274, 360 slash line, a 31% strikeout rate. That's not great after, in his breakout last year. He only struck out 25% of the time, but there's some things to be encouraged by. The barrel rate is up. It's gone from 11% to 12%. The hard hit rate is up. It's gone from 40% to 44%. The chase rate is down by 4 percentage points. The contact rate is up by 2 percentage points. And the swing strike rate is actually down from last year. It was at 15% last year, and it's down to 13%. So that does give me some hope in that the K rate will normalize a little bit. I still think it'll be high 20%, not like the 25%, but the BABIP is super low. The home run to fly ball rate is pretty low for a 12% barrel rate guy at just 10% home run to fly ball. So I think that Josh Lowe is going to be. I think the Rays still are kind of going to sneak into the playoffs, or at least get close to it, even though the fact that they sold. And I
Mhm.
think that Josh Lowe can be a big reason why. They it is a bit of a platoon. They did play him a bunch there, or more than you would expect last year. He did have 67 plate appearances versus lefties last year, and he wasn't horrible. He had 240 with a 97 WRC plus last year. They really haven't given them run this year. It's only been 20 plate appearances, but it's not as strict a platoon as, like, say, a Wallner. I think they may let him run a little bit, especially that they've moved some pieces out there in Tampa Bay. But I still like
Mhm.
Josh Lowe for this year and for long term, and think that he can kind of be like a 10-10 guy, like if all things go well for this prediction for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, any guy that is available in half leagues, and like you said, I mean, just last year on the surface level, 20 homers, 32 steals, and hit 292. I think one thing that really is interesting, jumps out on his pitcher list page, is in the PLV section, which is like that, of course, like pitch level data. He has had basically that quality pitch percentage,
Mhm.
94th percentile. So opponent, just the pitches he's facing
Are
have, in
tough.
my opinion, by sheer luck, have been like very good pitches. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know that that's
You would have
necessarily
to think
a
that would
skill thing,
go
right?
down, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's like a flip of BABIP. Like, you're just kind of
Yeah.
getting bad luck that pitchers are dialed in at the
Mhm.
right time or the wrong time against you. So yeah, just hitting 217 after a year where you hit 290. I kind of like it, Steve. And again, hitting the
Yeah, I don't
clean
think
line.
he's a 290 hitter, but I think he's like a 250 hitter.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And yeah, the speed should be there as well, the pop. So
Does have 9
um,
steals. So I could see him. I could see him like doubling his line essentially
mhm.
um, from here on out.
Yeah, and bringing up the average a little bit. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think of all the names we've mentioned, I think that Low, because we've seen it, and because of just the Rays and like the raw talent too, like we were excited about him as a prospect and everything. I think he feels like a different category than the rest, which is a good sign that he is, and he's rostered a little bit in like Yahoo leagues.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's a good one who could go real hot and actually be like a league winner, as we've seen. Um, let's shift over to pitching, Steve, and we get to pick two of these, right? Are we doing three, or we want to condense it down to two?
Whatever you think. You want to do
We're running a little bit long, so I think we should do,
all
maybe we
right,
can
cool.
mention all three, but we'll
Yeah.
pick two for the game.
Okay,
We'll pick
cool.
two. Okay, so I am going to roll out David Festa, Steve, even though we've talked about him a handful of times. Thomas Nestico, TJ, came on and was talking about Festa. That was months back, and we were hoping that we'd see him. Festa came up, looked terrible, got sent back down. And in his second stint here, he now has 13 Ks in his last 9.5 innings, just 3 runs allowed. It's like a 4% walk rate and a 27% K rate. And in the minors, or no, maybe the 27% is high. I think it might be like 24%. But in the minors, Festa was running like a 13 K per 9. So the swing and miss stuff is there. He looked super confident in his outings. And I think it was pretty tough opponents. I believe it was the Phillies on the first one. And then just the other day, was it the Mets? I think. And the Mets have been hot. And he had 6 strikeouts in 5 innings. Had the whip finally in check, which is a .880 whip. He's been kind of plagued by being hittable in the games before that, but struck out 7 Phillies in 4 1/3. And he's got the White Sox this weekend. So I predict if he goes off on the White Sox, and we could see 10 strikeouts out of this guy. Yeah, it could get super expensive.
Yeah. So this may be your last chance. Yeah.
I think this is, and it's a guy we've talked about plenty, and we like, this would almost feel Reagan's-esque.
Yeah.
That we know who this guy is, and we're excited about him. Yes. Yeah. So I think Festa is one that I'm probably going to swap out, Steve, because one of in my prospect slot, I got Norby, but I think I'm going to make that switch in real time and just swap Festa for Norby to prove how actionable this one feels. But any thoughts to add on Festa? Otherwise, your first pitcher, Steve.
It's a small sample, but it's a tool that's powerful in small samples. It's a 20% strikeout minus walk rate in his 19 major league innings. And the walk rates that were a concern throughout his minor league career, especially recently, it's encouraging that he has just a 4.7% walk rate in his 19.1 innings. So maybe some of those walk rate struggles were a product of, at first in AAA earlier this year, the full automated strike zone and the challenge system. And then also, obviously, you get better framers with catchers in the major leagues and just better pitching coaches at the major leagues. So that's encouraging. I really like Festa and think that, if there's a guy that could take off, it is him these last 2 months, just considering how good his stuff is. Even the 321 BABIP and the 66% left on base percentage is a little unlucky. He did give up a bunch of homers in a few of those early starts. So maybe that's just, getting used to pitching, and that's sort of out of the system. So I'm pretty excited about Festa and glad that you put him on here. And think it's a great call.
For what it's worth, Nick Pollock has him 73 on the list. So even with just kind of this early signs of life, verbatim, Nick says his return to the majors was gorgeous. And he is 73, which kind of tracks out to be like an SB 5, 6.
Yeah, so. Like that's a guy that you kind of want to hold. Like that's probably a back end starter that you hold like with interest. And then like if he goes out and shoves versus the White Sox, like okay, and then from there it could get even better, right?
Yep, absolutely. So start us off, Steve, with your first pitcher here.
I'm going to push back. I'm going to say we need to do all 3. We'll go a little quick here because I'm not going to be able to choose. My first one here is Ryan Nelson. Throughout the year, he's accrued negative $3.5 on the Razzball player rater. He's only rostered 18%. And I'm wondering if the breakout is finally happening. He's been a sleeper, I feel like, for the last 2 seasons, definitely heading into this season, definitely heading into last season. Eno has always liked his stuff. Saris of the Athletic. There's been some interesting things there with Ryan Nelson. In the last 4 of his last 6 starts have been 1 run or fewer, including 0 in his start on Tuesday over 7 innings. He has a 27.4% strikeout rate in 18 innings since the All-Star break. A 17.4% strikeout minus walk rate in July in 37 innings. It's good stuff on the slider, good stuff on the change, a passable fastball at just like a league average stuff number at 101. Good locations. So like there's a lot to like with Ryan Nelson. It just hasn't been put together, other than like stretches like this. Like there were some points last year, but the K rate overall just wasn't there despite the stuff there. But it's a 95 mile an hour fastball. Yeah, the strikeout rate does not look great on the year, but that's ticked up, and the walk rate has gotten even better. I think Ryan Nelson is kind of a candidate to sort of have this breakout finally happen here in the second half or the last third of the season here in August and September.
Yeah, I could see it happening. I mean, the 2 out of the last 3 games with 9 strikeouts on the game log is, yeah,
Passes your game log test. Yeah,
I love a guy that when they're grooved in, it's one that just can be a week winner. And it's a name that I feel like you said, Eno. I know Nick's talked about him with like high praises, like don't draft a Toby late in your drafts, go for a Ryan Nelson, see if it can turn out. And he's also an extension guy, Steve, that we've been all season. We've seen guys that it's like, it seems like 80% of pitching breakouts, you go and see what that extension is, and it's always
IVB. Yeah.
Yep. In the red, it makes that fastball jump up a little bit more on the velo. So that 95 is probably playing more like a 97. So yeah, I think it's really good there. Like it a lot. Jumping to another guy who's got some good extension. It's Hayden Birdsong, 80 grade name, but for the Giants, Birdsong has been this interesting combination of like, high velocity, fantastic like strikeout guy. It's just the walk rate is at 12%. Like this feels like when you see he's got a slider, he's got a curveball, change up, like the pitcher is in there. It's just he is wild right now. And it's kind of following like the old Dylan Cease thing that you were in on, Steve, of just like you can't really teach the K's part. You can, and it's not easy, but like if you can get command under control.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw that with Luis Heel, right? It's like it's easier, even though it's a big if they can get the command in check or the control in check and just stop walking guys at a ridiculous rate. You're looking at a guy here who has a 30% K rate, which they don't grow on trees this time of the year, and pitch in San Fran as well. So I like Birdsong. I think, just the repertoire is impressive for a kid his age. It is a big caveat that it was 2 starts against the Rockies. Yeah, but he did have 20 strikeouts across those 2 starts, so dealing. But yeah, now he should get plenty of shots. And yeah, minus $6 projection, 40% rostered in the Razzball list. And then I'm sure in like Yahoo leagues, just to pull it up, it's got to be very, very low. Yeah, 22%. So should be pretty widely available. And it looks like he is set to rejoin the rotation against the Nationals on Tuesday. So that's Birdsong. Your thoughts there? Anything to add or push back
on? No, I like it. Command is a fickle thing. It comes and goes, right? And if he can get on a run, that's sort of all you need there as far as with that strikeout stuff, the command stuff. So so you have here Eastern Illinois alum. So shout out to your neck of the woods there.
Oh yeah. That's of all the colleges, maybe the one around state school around us that I've haven't one time I partied there, Steve. But compared to the other ones, it's much less. Almost forgot. We've got several other names to get to here, but we do have to take our second ad break, and we'll be right back after this. Okay, so Steve, back over to you for pitcher number 2. Who do you got here?
I'm going with DJ Hers. Another guy who's going to pass your game log test. And there's been some blowups, but there's been some really good starts. And overall, the 29.3% strikeout rate will play. and pair that with just a 6.6% walk rate. You have a really interesting K minus BB, which is the powerful tool in short samples that we talk about. And he's just been a bit unlucky with BABIP and home run the fly ball. He has given up a bunch of hard contact, which is concerning. And the fact that he pitches half his games in Washington, D.C., which gets super hot and becomes a very hitter-friendly park in the dog days of summer, which we are in. But I think that the strikeout stuff is too good to pass up. It's not going to blow off the page in any stuff metrics. It seems like a sort of a quote unquote model breaker. But all the underlying stuff passes the eye test. It's a 31.5% chase rate, 81st percentile, a 31.3% whiff rate, 88th percentile. And then overall, the swing strike, where the denominator is pitches, is 13.5%. So that backs up the 29% strikeout rate. So the dude misses bats.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's a 4.79 ERA because of those few blowups, but it's a 3.33 xERA, a 3.46 FIP, xFIP, and a 3.28 Sierra. So I think DJ Hers is kind of a guy that I want to. I put it in like the David Festa bucket. Like, I want this guy on my team. I want to stream him in the good matchups and then sort of stick it out, because I think that he may have good enough stuff that he could stick around in your rotation the rest of the year.
I was just about to ask, but him and Festa are kind of similar types. Which one would you prefer?
The stuffest in me wants to go Festa, but like the underlying swing and miss makes me lean Hers. And the fact that he doesn't have, the history, or at least a recent history in the majors of walk issues. The walk rates in the minors for Hers are insane. It was a 19% walk rate in AAA. Again, this year, that a lot of that is automated balls and strikes, ABS. But even then, it was, there was some 13%, so 20% in 30 innings in 2022 at AA. So it's seemingly that something's clicked, but it seems like a very similar profile as far as like what the issues were with Festa and Hers. But I guess I would lean the tiebreaker would be that the models and the stuff likes Festa. So I would lean Festa there, but it's close.
Yeah, we haven't seen Festa strike out 13 guys in a game.
No, and he's got a 30% strikeout rate in 41 innings. Like,
yeah, it's impressive. Right, nothing to sneeze at. And they're both middle of the. I went on the spirit of last week's episode being the tiebreaker to see if the Twins or the Nationals had an easier or harder strength of schedule. They're both in the middle of the pack there, so kind of a wash. But
maybe the division would make me lean Festa there too, right? Like less NL East teams, more AL Central.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think Festa's the slight lean, but I can tell you already the pitchers feel like a much better chapter.
Yeah, we're better at this anyway. Yeah,
hitters. Yeah, right. They're a lot more plentiful this time of year, which is why you got to invest in hitting in the drafts. It's the Giswelli playbook there. Okay, well, this next combo will be good, Steve, because looking at the Brave here, Grant Holmes, a little bit of a reliever reclamation project, kind of turned starting pitcher. Another guy who's got a super deep arsenal, 60 grade slider. Holmes, I think people are just wondering, like, will the Braves be able to actually sustain what he's been able to do? Because he's got a just one start under his belt, but prior to that, on the season overall, 28 innings, 29 strikeouts, a 2.54 ERA. So like, the guy's a good pitcher, as seen with the 27% K rate and the sub 5 walk rate. But in just his one start, which came against the Brewers, who strike out quite a bit, which, by the way, that's who DJ Hers has next.
There you go.
8 strikeouts in 5 innings, just 3 hits, 1 run. So with I know the MRI came back negative for Ronaldo Lopez, which makes this kind of a a little bit of a tryout for the 5th spot for the Braves. But Grant Holmes, at least on Roster Resource, has this right now. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting. He is not one compared to all the other names yet that has any extension whatsoever. The fastball velo is at like a true 95, which is pretty good. But I think probably what's most impressive about him has been just the variety of pitches that he mixes in with the fastball, curve, slider, cutter. Like he seems to me like he's kind of a pitcher's pitcher and that he gets a lot of strikes from a lot of those. And yeah, we'll see what happens. He's not like a high ground ball pitcher or anything. But so far with the Braves, you're going to get some wins if you can go deep enough into games. So yeah, that's where I think Grant Holmes this time of year could get you some wins, could get some low ratios. And as long as he can go 5-6 innings every time he's out there, I think you got a decent shot at the strikeout per inning. So I kind of like it here in AAA. He had 51 strikeouts in 41 innings with a 2.63 ERA as well. So it's like there is swing and miss in his game.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not like blow your hair back like velocity or anything like that. But your thoughts on Grant Holmes, Steve, and then I'll let you kind of round us out with a very topical final one for you. And it's actually one of the guys that's his pitch comparison on Savant, which is funny.
Nice.
But yeah, thoughts on Holmes.
Yeah, a great story on Grant Holmes. Like he was breaking down in the dugout. Just seems like a great guy. Or not in the dugout, but in the post game like locker room scrum after that. After that impressive start. And hey, the Braves need pitching, so maybe he sticks around even with Reynaldo Lopez seemingly like he's okay, and the fact that he'll make his next start. So definitely an awesome story, and would love to see it him stick around. But hey, could be like at least in like saving holes leagues or where you need like a good bullpen SPRP, something like that. He could still even be some valuable there. But my other guy, I think he's more firmly entrenched in the Braves rotation. That's Spencer Schwellenbach, year to date, negative 2.1 at 50% rostered. So this one is definitely like, the least available and closest to not being eligible for our game. But still available. Those are the rules, and I'm not breaking them. He has a 25.5% strikeout rate, a 4.3% walk rate. So K minus BB above 20%. You'd love to see it. Backed up by a 13.2% swing strike rate, elite chase rate at 97 percentile, 6 pitches that he throws 9% of the time or more. Good velo on the fastball at 96. I mean, what's there not to like really with Spencer Schwellenbach? This seems like the answer for the Braves rotation. Like the Braves always have it seems like they go through like 4 or 5 pitching prospects at a time, and then one hits, and that's the guy that sticks. It seems like Schwellenbach is that kind of guy. It's a 3.28 xERA, 3.39 Sierra to back up his impressive start there. So if Spencer Schwellenbach's out there, I would run to go grab him.
Okay, so you're that high on him.
Okay. Yeah. I think of all the guys, I think I like Schwellenbach probably the most out of all the names that we talked about. It seems like he's the most real. I don't know. It could, I guess, change quickly, but he was running. It was a jump from AA, but he did have an 18% swing strike rate there in 13 innings. He actually started in High A this year, where he had a 15% swing strike rate. So, good stuff there. Impressive numbers. A high mover through the Braves organization. 2nd round draft pick in 2021. So definitely an interesting arm for the Braves, but I think I like him the best out of all these guys.
Okay. Yeah. I guess that's fair, at least for right now. And yeah, 50% rostered Yahoo. So he's available, not as prevalent as some of these other ones.
Yeah.
I just remember early on, like it seems like he's been available in waves this season because he's been pretty hittable. at times, but it has looked a lot better, and especially the last couple.
Yeah, I'm pulling
Couple
up
outings,
the
yeah.
game log now. Yeah, there was a 6 runs at Boston, 6 runs in his second start.
Mhm.
After there were some signs that he was impressive in his first start versus Washington, the 5 strikeouts and 1 walk. Then a few four-run starts, but I mean, the last game versus the Mets, 7 innings, 11 strikeouts, no walks.
Yeah, man.
The one before that versus St. Louis, 8 strikeouts, no walks, but did give up 3 home runs. So,
Yeah.
there was 5 home runs on the year, and they've come in 2 games. So, but the strikeout and walk totals are pretty impressive for Schallenbach. So, I think
Yeah,
it
I
could
think
be
that's fair.
something
Yeah.
to hold on to.
Yeah, I think you're right. We might have saved the best one for last there. I'm gonna be really interested to watch what Festa does this weekend against the White Sox, because I think
Yeah.
it's kind of, to me, it's the inflection point on, is it gonna be 2024 was a cup of coffee year and kind of Brandon Pfaadt-esque, or
Yeah.
is he going to go off with like double-digit Ks and suddenly he's like emptying everyone's fab bids? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I think we're one mega start away from Festa being right there with Schwellenbach in terms of like ownership percentage and everything. But
The Festa Fiesta Fab
yeah,
weekend
baby.
could
Yeah,
potentially
yeah.
be.
So yeah, that's a great list. I mean, I think the lesson learned here is pitching is in a much better place than
Yeah,
hitting.
I
So
mean,
if
it's
you,
more,
yeah,
we have more powerful tools and smaller samples. So, yeah, I'd feel much more confident about our pitching hits, hitting, our pitching picks hitting, than our hitting hits hitting.
pitching,
But
yes.
yeah, or the Wallner has thrown a bunch of innings. He's like kind of a mop up guy. I think he has like 3 innings for them. Pretty funny. But I still think our process was good, but it definitely was harder on the pitch hitting side.
It is. It
And a
is.
lot of
It's
that,
a good
like a
list.
lot of the hitting, like it's like, all right, add the hot bat and like see who stays. Like that's kind of a lot of how hitting ads sort of work, right?
For sure. Yeah. It's a
Remember
shorter,
remember like
leash.
Elvis Andrews, like what was that? Was that 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
I was all over that one.
You're
Do you
all
remember? I
over
was
that
like,
one.
I
Yeah.
know he's on the White Sox, but he's like, and he just ended
Was
up
that
being
2 years ago,
super
right?
easy.
Yeah, that was like yeah.
I
He was
think
like one of the
so.
best fantasy players down the stretch. It's like, and no matter what we would have done, nothing would have led us to picking Elvis Andrews for this game, right? We could
No,
have had
no.
50 picks that year and we would have never picked Elvis Andrews,
It's just so boring. Like, you're not looking at that as like a breakout. I do think like Tommy Pham is another one that like goes
Yeah,
in
that's a good one.
bunches, and he's
Yeah.
5% rostered.
Yeah.
He went 3 for 4 tonight. He's got the new team bounce with the Cardinals.
And he's always a chip on the shoulder guy, and like he like hated how he left the Cardinals. Like, in what
Totally.
better way to like kind of shove it back to the Cardinals by showing them like what they missed, right? That
Right,
sort of thing.
right.
Yeah.
And
I could
yeah,
see him
it
going
just,
off.
yeah, and he's also the guy that, it's kind of like the Arozarena thing. Like, I feel like he'll predict stolen bases too, or like just decide he wants to
Yeah.
go off
Oh
on
yeah.
stealing
Yeah.
for like a week and everything. So I think
Yeah.
Pham is a really good kind of five by five wild card this time of the year. So that's another one there. But yep, the veterans sometimes can offer the boost that you need too. So like you said, ride the hot hand. But
Yeah.
well, that rounds us out, folks, for episode 150. It was a fun one, Steve. Appreciate the idea on the rundown. We are going to have to remember, when we get to kind of the sleepy moments of September before we launch into too early off-season stuff, we got to go back and look at some of these forecasting episodes to bust out the scoreboard and everything, and
Yeah, the
see how
last 2,
our picks.
especially how the schedule looked, and then how you know these picks turned out.
Yeah, lightning in a
But
bottle anywhere is the question. But thank you guys for tuning in. It has been a fantastic privilege. If I can speak for you, Steve, to do this for 150 shows, and we wouldn't do it if we didn't get listeners like you and feedback from people like you. So Really appreciate it. Cheers to the home stretch here and to episode 150. And as always, thank you for talking baseball with us.
Yeah, here's to the next 150 episodes of WAF. Thanks for listening, guys. Later.
Love it.
Sweet.